going to be devoting the whole hour of coverage to what is happening along coastal Texas, starting last night when Hurricane Harvey, a Category 4 hurricane, came on shore and provided incredible devastation along the coast of Texas. And as we speak right now, we'd like to put out a call for any preppers who are in the listening of this show would like to call in. If you're in that area affected by the storm, you're welcome to call in, 347-202-0228. Dial 1 to enter the talk queue, and we can get you on the air. In the meantime, let's go ahead and cover some discussion concerning the storm. The good news is good news. Time is healing all wounds. We had a tremendous Category 4 storm last night, and all through the day, it's been a slow-moving, slowly weakening storm. And according from the National Hurricane Center, Harvey has continued to weaken while located inland over Texas. Doppler radar data indicate that winds are now 55 knots, and since there are no surface observations near the center, this is the intensity used for the current advisories. The continued weakening is anticipated, and the National Hurricane Center forecast uses the trend provided by the various computer models. However, if a large portion of Harvey's circulation remains over the Gulf of Mexico, the cyclone could weaken at a slower rate than what has been indicated. Hurricane Harvey, boy, that's going to be a tough one for me to say, has barely moved during the past few hours, and little motion is anticipated. It's currently on a northwest track, and it is almost equidistant between Austin and San Antonio as it slowly makes its way into the south-central portion of Texas. And it is just bringing in torrential rains, record-breaking rains, and high winds. However, over the last few hours now, the storm has started to dissipate. Wind speeds are starting to go down a little bit, but that still is still within a lot of dangerous range. We got tornadoes all throughout the region, and it continues to do so through the night. The main things to remember is that while Harvey's winds are decreasing, life-threatening hazards will continue from heavy rainfall over much of southeastern Texas and from the storm surge along portions of the Texas coast. There still is a risk of storm surge. Catastrophic and life-threatening flooding is expected across the middle and upper Texas coast from additional rainfall of 15 to 25 inches. Repeating, 15 to 25 inches, with isolated storm totals as high as 40 inches all through Thursday. If you're in the area, please heed the advice of your local officials. Do not drive into flooded roadways. Refer to products from your National Weather Service office, your local office, and the NOAA Weather Prediction Center for more information on the flooding hazard. A summary of rainfall totals compiled by the National Weather Prediction Center can be found at www.wpc.ncep.noaa.gov. That's the Weather Prediction Center, the National Center of Emergency Preparedness at NOAA.gov. A storm surge warning still remains in effect for portions of the Texas coast. Life-threatening storm surge floodings will be slow to recede due to slow motion of Harvey and a prolonged period of onshore flow. So current positions and max winds as of current is 30.5 degrees north, latitude 97.0 degrees west, longitude. Maximum winds 30 knots, which is equivalent of 35 miles per hour, and the eye is inland. Yes, indeed, friends, we've had ourselves a tremendous storm, and if you've been following the Weather Channel, they're quick to tell you that this is the first major hurricane we have had in almost a decade. Although, you know, when it gets up to the speeds that even a Category 4 storm, if you lived in one, you realize there's nothing minor about them. So tonight we'll go in some detail about how you can recover after the storm. right now you've done all the preps that you can do if you're in that area, and there's little much else that you can do. But it's just one of those things. Now that the storm is happening and it's on you, the best thing you can do is hunker down, weather the storm, ride it out if you can, evacuate if you can, if you need to. But the best advice is to stay put until you can get help arrive or you can be able to get out in a break. And now that the storm eye has moved inland, and over the next several hours, things weaken and you start getting these feeder bands. In fact, I was just watching the Weather Channel earlier, and now they're describing that the majority of the high energy of the storm is now starting to spread out, which makes it so that, you know, if you recall on a cyclone, it is the forward right side of the storm is where it has its highest intensity. Well, the feeder bands that are wrapping around that eye to the right of the storm, if you look at it on the map, shows that right now the current areas of Texas that are under the gun at this moment is the feeder bands that are now starting to reach up into Houston. Houston is now on the bullseye list. And they can expect some tornadoes, hail, tremendous amounts of lightning, and torrential rains nonstop, or torrential one moment and nothing the next. So it's a mixed bag, and it is just amazing on what some of the stuff has happened in the past. So let's go do that. Let's take a look at some of that information. If I can get in here. Again, we're interested if there's anybody in the area and are listening in, call in. If you have phone capability, give us a call, and we'll see what we can do about getting you on the air. We'd love to be able to get some information of how you prepped for it and how you're able to recover, and so we could all learn on how to be better prepared in the eventuality of a disaster such as this. Now's the time that, even though the devastation continues, we all can learn from some of this information as well. Let me see. Again, calling 347-202-0228. We'll see what we can do about getting some of you on the air. Remember, dial 1 to enter the talk queue. Also, on Prepper Broadcasting, we have the chat room, and we do have a number of folks, Flying Dutchman, Pappy, and That's Nub, and Volcana. Hello, folks. And glad to see y'all in here. Flying Dutchman's Flatland and Feet of Rain, not a good combo. Yes, indeed. That's definitely a good description of Texas. And G-Man has noticed that there's some stores are charging $90 for a case of water, $8 a bottle in Texas. Wow. Tell me they don't have price scalping. But, you know, it's supply and demand. If they've got a limited supply and the demand is high, they have to do one thing that they can do. And right now we got a whole bunch of folks out there that are definitely, like G-Man said, they're wishing that they were preppers. I can recall what happened with me just a little over a year ago with Hurricane Matthew. The traumatic time was the wait afterward when there was no power, living on generator power, having to make sure, that's the kind of stuff that can happen. You prep and prep and prep, and then when it really occurs, it's kind of like you've prepped, and it's like camping. The best way I could describe my experience, when the storm was really bad, that was bad enough. Then when the walls cave in, the roof came down in the family room, you made do. I stretched the tarp over a gaping open hole in the wall to make sure anything drained in. But by that time, the storm had passed. We were very fortunate. It was a rather quick-moving storm, and it had gone on further on up the coast. So we had beautiful weather afterward. And it was not a difficult situation to be able to secure at least my house from any further damage from rain, because we didn't get much rain at all immediately after that storm. And it was just a matter that I'm trying to get caught up on what's happening in the chat room here. I'm doing my best, folks. It's tough when you've got several pages open and you get covered up. Next thing you know, there's something happening in the chat room and I'm missing it. But bear with me if I pause for every moment because I'm trying to get windows open so I can see. Flying Dutchman had a good story about a guy interviewed leaving Sam's Club yesterday. Said he would come back later and get water, and it was too crazy. Next woman they interviewed said she hoped they had water. She had been there 4 stores and had none. So, yes, indeed. That was the reason why I stocked up not on bottles of water, but stocked up on a 45-gallon bladder water bag called the Hughes, and I could fill up my bathtub full of water, and it gave me plenty of drinking water for the period of time that we did not have electricity for my well, and that worked out too. That was really provident, and I highly recommend that. Instead of trying to focus on stockpiling water, try stockpiling some food grade plastic bags that you can fill with water, and then all you have to do then is just keep it clean. A couple of drops of chlorine bleach in the water keeps it disinfected, and you can use that water to drink with, to bathe with, to flush your commodes with. All across the region of Texas right now, the communities are being advised to boil their water. Those that have communities that have electricity or their pumps are working, but because of the tremendous amount of water that has rained down on them, that a lot of the water supplies have been contaminated with fecal bacteria and whatnot, so it is not safe to drink any of the municipal water until they get the system flushed out. And that's always a smart advisory to have, is your own independent water supply. That works out just great for most people when they have that opportunity. But unfortunately, if you live in a city environment, that's usually something that don't have that luxury. Well, let's see. Looking into some more information, let's tell you about what's happening in Texas. Hurricane Harvey powered ashore along the central Texas coast, and it looks like Rockport, Texas, population 9,000, was the epicenter. It came ashore near 10 p.m. Central Daylight Time Friday night as a Category 4 storm, packing 130-mile-per-hour winds. Heavy damage was reported in Rockport, which is about 40 miles northeast of Corpus Christi, and also in the town of Charlie. At least 10 people were injured there from collapsed roofs. Harvey's was the first Category storm to strike the U.S. since Hurricane Charlie. That's right, in 2004. And it was the first major landfalling hurricane, Category 3 or stronger, since Hurricane Wilma in 2005. At 1 p.m. Central Daylight Time today, Harvey had weakened to a tropical storm with 70 miles per hour winds. It's now gone down to around 50 mile per hour winds. It was centered around 30 miles to the northwest of where it made landfall. And here's the big rub with this storm. It's going to make a huge impact, not only in its intensity when it made landfall, but because of its forward motion. It is nearly stationary, and of which it's still a cyclone that is drawing up huge amounts of moisture out of the Gulf, and it is just pummeling the whole area, record amounts of rain. And, you can expect it just to continue. They're saying this thing might even bound back out to the coast, and as far out as Thursday, you'll still see tremendous raining conditions. Days of relentless rounds of torrential rainfall. Let me see what other tidbits of news I could find about it. Of course, continued storm surge flooding in Galveston Bay is a major concern. As you know as well as I do, that the majority of our oil refining capability is all centered in this Texas coast. And the oil industry has, in effect, shut down in anticipation and to weather this storm. So you can probably expect some spiking at the pump in the way of some gas prices. But that's usually typical in these situations. You get that happening all the time. And but don't be surprised. I mean, it's not all that difficult to get these oil rigs and oil refineries back up to speed once things get turned around. What's going to be a big difference is whether or not they're going to be able to clear all that water. It takes time to get stuff pumped away. And it's just one of those situations where that's something that still remains to be seen. Oh, looking at some of the details in the chat room, was only going about 10 miles per hour. Said it. Yep, that's right. And I'm now getting prepared for an earthquake or tornado. Well, that's smart to do right now, especially if you are in the area of the storm. The storm systems now, you don't have to worry too much. Of course, if you're on the coastal regions, and the cyclone effect of the hurricane, or now a tropical storm, is still causing water to be brought on shore. And you do have to deal with some amount of storm surge. But right now, the major difficulties is the huge thunderstorms and the possibility of tornadoes. If you're in a region, in that central Texas region, particularly as we speak right now, in a line that's heading right straight toward Houston, be aware that you're going to be under the gun with some tremendous rains that are going to be like a freight train, one storm after another, all in a line. And that's these theater bands of this storm. And embedded in those is tornadoes and funnel clouds, dense pockets of rain, dense pockets of hail, and downdraft heavy winds. Ground's going to be soaked, so what trees and vegetation that's out there is getting pummeled, and all it's going to take is a good breeze and good wind, and trees are going to get knocked over. Power lines get brought down. Homes get wrecked and that kind of stuff. So that's the conditions that we have to look out for right now. Well, anyway, those of us who are smart, we've already gotten our preps together. So if you're in that area and you're a good prepper, then all you have to really do is just find the center portion of your house, the safest portion of your house, guard your stockpile, gather up your family, and hunker down. You can't go wrong doing that. Keep your radios, or if you still have power and you got your television, your cable is working or whatever, get to listen to your monitor, your scanners, or your radios, and pay heed to the authorities. I think there was some controversy. One of the mayors of one of the coastal communities caused a stir on the national TV scene when they showed him advising people that if you're going to stay, take a Sharpie and draw your Social Security number on your arm or the name of the next of kin. And that seems kind of maudlin, but that's actually a very smart thing to do. Because if you're in the path, especially down along the coast, and they're telling you you need to evacuate for your life, and you refuse to do so, well, they're not going to risk anybody to come out and rescue your sorry butt because you were too stubborn or too stupid to evacuate when you had plenty of time. I think time and time again, whenever we have these tremendous storms happen, that's usually the case. You get a lot of people that, I ain't going to leave. They ain't got no problem. We're going to throw a hurricane party. And the next thing you know, you got a roof peeled off your house. You got 4 or 5 feet of water coming in through your front door and going right out your back door. And now you're screaming bloody murder trying to get somebody on 911 to come rescue your butt. And you'll find out that ain't going to be the case. That won't happen. Civil authorities have already been put out the word that in most cases, when winds gets up to around 45 miles per hour, it is unsafe for their crews. They're not going to risk their lives to rescue a single soul until after conditions improve. That seems kind of bleak. Tough old world out there, folks. And it ain't like, no man is a special island. If you're resilient and you're self-reliant, and you've got your wits about you, and you have prepared, well, then, yeah, that's a smart move. You can hunker down and stay, as long as you're smart enough to realize that is the smart play. But also to realize that they pack up and get the heck out of Dodge is a smart play. That comes with wisdom. And I hope there are so many people out there that they might be in a Red Cross shelter. They might be stuck behind a building somewhere or whatever. They're bunkered up with friends. But I hope they have. And it's not without the fact that we're going to be losing some deaths, that's for sure. One dead so far, one headline. Here's some infographics. One dead as Tropical Storm Harvey shreds the Texas coast. Residents told to stay out of several communities. This is from the Weather Underground. Sean Breslin reported that at least one person is dead after Tropical Storm Harvey rolled into the South Texas coast Friday as a Category 4 hurricane. Okay, according to media reports, a Rockport man was killed when his house caught fire at the height of the storm. Aransas County Judge C.8 Burt Mills Jr. told the Austin American Statesman 12 to 14 people were injured by Harvey. That's according by the Associated Press. Officials in several coastal Texas towns asked residents to stay away until they could get a better scope of the destruction caused by Hurricane Harvey, now a tropical storm. A curfew was in place in Port Lavaca because all power, water, and sewer services were down, the city's police department said in a recent Facebook post. Also in Port Aransas, Mayor Charles Boujan told the Weather Channel there was widespread outages, including a trailer park that is 100% destroyed. Search and rescue operations continued in the town Saturday afternoon, and all residents were asked to stay out of the town because damage was severe and authorities needed more time to survey. That's according to KIII-TV. During a Saturday press conference, Texas Governor Greg Abbott said that it's too early to speculate on how much property damage the storm has occurred, although one estimate has put it up to around $2 billion. And it does look like out of the crapshoot of everything, to draw the wrong short stick, it is the community of Rockport, Texas. Buildings were ripped to shreds in Rockport. Firefighters were unable to respond to pleas for help in the hours following Harvey's Friday night landfall. In Rockport, a town of about 10,000, located on Aransas Bay, it's been reported 10 people sustained injuries when the roof of a senior housing complex collapsed during the storm. The severity of those injuries was unknown. Quote, "We know there is widespread devastation," Rockport mayor said during a Saturday morning interview with the Weather Channel. "I think it's safe to say we took a Cat 4 hurricane right on the nose. We appreciate everyone's prayers." Officials estimate that 40% of residents did not heed voluntary evacuation orders and remained in the city as Harvey roared ashore. Oh, come on now, that enough. Don't tell me you're hearing rumors that they're blaming they're blaming New Orleans on Trump? Huh. What's happened in New Orleans? Geez. That might happen later on this week. Just stay tuned for that. Firefighters in Rockport said they wouldn't be able to respond to emergency calls until conditions improved. Just like I said, there's nothing we could do at the moment. We're anxious to get out there and make assessments, but we're hunkered down too. 26 minutes after the hour, we're coming down to the bottom of the hour. And again, the invite is out for anyone wishing to call into the show. We're doing special hurricane coverage of Hurricane Harvey. We're going to be talking about preparedness. And if you've got a story, if you happen to be in the bullseye or in the track of that storm or living through it as we speak, we want to get your information. Give us a call, 347-202-0228, dial 1 to enter the talk queue. So far, the U.S. Coast Guard has rescued 4 people from a vessel Signet Enterprise Saturday near Port Aransas. According to the news accounts, in total, at least 20 people have been rescued from vessels. Just under 300,000 customers remain without power in Texas. Well, that's interesting. In such a broad area. Well, okay, such a broad area, there might not be a whole lot of people. That might change here in the next few hours as Houston gets further under threat. Damage near Houston may have been caused by tornadoes. Fort Bend County roofs were torn off homes and trees were scattered across roads in the Senna Plantation neighborhood. And the damage may have been caused by a tornado. That's Ridge Point High School also suffered damage during the storm. That's according to TV station KTRK. At least 50 homes were damaged in the area during the powerful storm. KHOU reported no major injuries were reported, but a deputy was blown off the road while responding to the situation. Excuse me, I'm all choked up. Late Saturday morning. This was late this morning. Damage was also reported in the town of Katy, Texas. May have been caused by tornadoes. Images on social media showed heavy damage to structures in the town. No injuries were reported there, according to a separate KTRK report. Residents in Montgomery County will be unable to return home for an extended period of time because of the power transmission issue. Authorities will be putting up roadblocks, and only workers at the chemical plant in Montgomery County will be permitted through the barriers. County officials say it would be days before the mandatory evacuation is lifted and residents can return home. Evacuees in San Antonio are also being told to stay out while crews clear roads. Governor Abbott has waived hotel taxes for all evacuees and first responders. Again, putting out the call for anyone wishing to join us in the show in the second half, the APN report. Just dial 347-202-0228, dial 1 to enter the talk queue, or come join us in the chat room. But otherwise, we're about 80% complete. And again, a reminder, all this damage that occurred, the 6 trees came down around my house, damaged my family room. That occurred in October, which that's 10 months ago. We're at the end of 10 months. It's going to be 11 months ago. So there's a good chance if we get any major storms, which in fact, glancing over here at the Weather Channel, which has been on here at the house ever since Hurricane Harvey came ashore, I'm looking at there's a possibility of some tropical storm development coming out of the Florida Panhandle, coming out of Central Florida, that might be affecting the southeastern coast, my neck of the woods, in about 5 days. So, Glenn, I'll tell you what. Here's what we're going to do. We were worried about what we were going to come up with. I'm just going to go ahead and call it. Next week's show, we're going to be talking more about hurricanes and tropical storms. That's all there is to it. Because I might be in the middle of one. Who knows? There's a good possibility we will do the same thing we did in our inaugural show. Have a live show in the middle of a tropical storm or a hurricane. Never can tell. Keep your fingers crossed. 5-day forecast says there's a 50% chance of a tropical development here along the southeast coast. And the way my luck's been going this year, yeah, I think we might have one. Who knows? Been seeing here in the chat room, there's some links. They posted about some of the damage. If you want to see pictures of Rockport, Texas, you can get on YouTube. There's a link there. We were talking about Katrina. What was the discussion? Oh, yeah. Who knows? They might blame this on Trump all the same. Who can tell? Yeah, let's see. Where are we at here? Yeah, Volcano was there. I remember that first show. That was crazy. Actually, it was exciting. I didn't know what was going to expect. We didn't have any electricity. I was running on battery power, talking in my cell phone, and I had my Coleman lanterns lit here in the living room. Had to make sure, well, I didn't have to worry about carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide buildup because the house was well ventilated, believe me, with a busted window at one end of the house and a busted room in the other end of the house. I didn't have a thing to worry about in the way of getting overcome by any kind of poison gas. Just a matter of making sure that any other trees didn't come down. And, you know, that's not to say I'm not out of the woods, pardon the pun. If we have another major storm, 2 other great big oak trees that could be making this house into kindling. I might be moving into this new room before it's all told and done. So we'll see how that works out. Hey, let's go back on some more details about this current storm. Here's some of the effects that's happened because of Hurricane Harvey. Cruise ships are unable to return to Galveston. Besides the oil industry, the Texas coast is also a large portion of our cruise ship industry. The Caribbean cruise lines like to come right out of Galveston, and right now some 20,000 passengers on 4 cruise ships were stranded in the Gulf of Mexico as a hurricane made conditions too dangerous to return to Galveston. If you have friends that are enjoying a cruise on the Carnival Valor and the Carnival Freedom, they had planned to return to Galveston on Friday. They'll instead sail to New Orleans. The Carnival Breeze stayed in Cozumel an extra day Friday night. Well, that was nice of them. It was expected to depart for Galveston Saturday, while the Royal Caribbean Liberty, all of the seas, Caribbean Liberty of the Seas, that's a fancy name, was expected to wait until Sunday to sail back to Texas. So they got another day to buy their coconut monkeys and their T-shirts and all the trinkets that they can there in Cozumel. Corpus Christi officials issue stern warnings before and during storm. That's something we preppers are well versed in. We know how we treat trespassers. Corpus Christi, the major city closest to the center of the storm, issued a boil water order Friday night. That's a different thing besides looting. You have to worry about your water supply. Quote, to ensure destruction of all harmful bacteria and other microbes, water for drinking, cooking, or ice making should be boiled and cooled prior to use for drinking water or human consumption purposes, the order states. The water should be brought to a vigorous rolling boil and then boiled for 2 minutes. Residents are also asked to refrain from flushing toilets using tap water. Melissa Mangila, the Deputy Emergency Management Coordinator for Nueces County, which includes Corpus Christi, told the Associated Press early Saturday that it could be several more hours before crews could fully assess the damage in coastal communities. Officials say they have no idea how many residents remained in the city of 325,000 in nearby low-lying areas. Those same officials warned that those who remained in the path of the powerful hurricane would be subjected to the storm's wrath for days. Were suggested, quote, if people are going to stay here, mark their arm with a Sharpie pen with their name and social security number. That was Rockport Mayor Pro Tem Patrick Rios. And he made national news with that little remark. I think it's smart. If you're going to be in that area, hey, we had to do that in Desert Storm, Desert Shield. We carried an extra dog tag in the webbing of our combat boot, just so in case the rest of us was obliterated, they had a part like a leg or a foot. At least they'd be able to identify what that part belonged to. And it just makes sense. You're going to be foolish enough to stay in an area where you could be torn limb from limb. You better have one of them marked with your with some bona fides. Otherwise, they're going to say, gee whiz, we remember them, we just can't find them. We hate to talk about things like that. That's a quote from the mayor. It's not something we like to do, but it's the reality. People don't listen. Isn't that a fact? And meanwhile, while I have you all listening, if there's anybody who wants to call in, You're welcome to dial 1-347-202-0228. Enter dial 1 to enter the talk queue. Just hours before the hurricane made landfall, the governor and Houston leaders issued conflicting statements on evacuation. Ha! I knew something like that was bound to happen. Governor Greg Abbott urged more people to flee, even if their cities were not in evacuation zones, while Houston authorities told people to remain in their homes and did not recommend widespread evacuations. Yeah, somebody missed the memo somewhere. As the storm approached Friday night, President Donald Trump tweeted that he had signed a disaster proclamation unleashing, quote, the full force of government help, said the request of Governor Abbott, who earlier in the day warned that the storm would be a very major disaster. On Saturday, the president tweeted from Camp David that his administration is leaving nothing to chance. Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said Trump will travel to Texas early next week. Trump reportedly instructed relevant and agencies to stay fully engaged and positioned to support this number one priority of saving lives. Meanwhile, the Texas National Guard has deployed more than 1,000 personnel to assist. More than 400 doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals from around the nation were called in by the federal government. 250-bed medical units are also being deployed to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, while other federal medical units are available in Dallas. The Texas National Guard deployed more than 1,000 personnel ahead of the storm to assist in rescues and aftermath. Consumers are asked to report gas price gouging to the Texas Attorney General's office. And animal shelters as far away as Atlanta are accepting animals from the devastated Texas coast. Very interesting information imparted that, boy, I'll tell you what, in times of disaster, it's no holds barred. It's stuff that needs to get spread around and spread and spoken. Brian Dutchman said we got straight line winds the night before Labor Day just north of Syracuse in 98. Yep. I tell you what, when the breezes start blowing, the trees are rocking and rolling, it gets your attention in the worst way. I think that's having to hunker down and stay in place during a major storm. Unless I was right on the coast and I have to worry about storm surge, it's the winds that get me, folks. If you've ever had to be in the middle of one of these, it's, you know, I understand where people will say tornadoes are just pure devastation, but it's a short-lived devastation. A tornado can come and rip things up and be done in a minute or two. We're talking hours. Hurricane winds, straight-line winds, gales, the sound of shrieking winds blowing for 12 hours, for 20 hours. After a while, you just get totally unnerved. You know, when you're sitting in a household and you're looking at the walls moving back and forth, you know, that's pretty horrendous. But when you're watching it, you go to bed and you can't sleep because the bed is rocking. And you finally fall asleep, but then you wake up in the middle of the night because the bed is rocking worse. You know, it hasn't stopped, it's gotten worse. That's kind of a mind-numbing effects. And, you know, that's something to talk about, the aftermath in the storm. That's probably one of the biggest dangers you have to deal with. If you're a survivor in one of these situations, let's just, you know, knock on wood, everything has passed you by. The only thing you have to worry about is boiling your water for water to drink, and maybe you're running a generator because you don't have any electricity. You got a generator and you've got electricity, but the cable's knocked out. But you do have a transistor radio and you can hear announcements. At least you got some contact to the outside world. You can charge up your cell phone. If there's cell towers working, you can be able to reach outside of that. But in the meantime, you're relatively isolated. And you've gone through 48 hours of sheer terror. Well, it's just like being in battle. In about another 48 hours after that, you come to close to a nervous breakdown because your body is being torn up by your own adrenaline. You're keyed up. You're having to be on watch. You can't sleep. You haven't ate. And you get to the point where the body starts to just down. That's the hardest time to deal with these crises because you're much higher likelihood to make mistakes. You can't think things through correctly. It took a hard time for me 2 days after the storm to figure out just basically what would be my first step. I had a devastated house. I had to deal with it, but I had to figure out, it took me time to sit down and write things down because the mind just gets overloaded with too much stuff, too much stimulus until the point where it just can't cope, can't put 1 and 1, 2 and 2, or 3 and 3 together. And it takes time to get that stuff out of your system. So if you're in a situation where something like this has occurred, or if you're weathering a storm right now, best you could do is, if you're safe and sound and you know that you can make it for the next few hours, get some sleep. Get some shut-eye. Curl up. Don't bother with trying to make sure that the handheld radio is working or making sure that you've got everybody squared away. Try to get some rest because it's after the storm. It's after the crisis when it really gets going. And that's where we come up as preppers at our best because we have at least a leg up in most respects in preparing. We have the water. We might have a generator. We have an automobile that's functional if you had to bug out. But still, all the same, 72 hours after that storm, that later on that evening, after I got done 2 days of cutting all the brush down that falling around the house, cleaning up as most as I can, I had to leave the house. And I ended up going down and I found a place that was open, a restaurant, just so I could sit in amongst people. I probably smelled like an old shoe and looked just about as ugly as one because I hadn't been able to bathe. I was wearing the clothes I'd worn 2 days before. And but still, just the opportunity to get in somewhere that had electricity on. It happened to be an Outback Steakhouse. I went in and I ordered something off the menu, and I told the waitress my circumstances. I said I just needed to get somewhere where there are people. And then I looked around and I saw that I wasn't alone. There were others probably in the same boat that I was in. So that's some fascinating stuff that it's psychology that you have to deal with. In most cases, under a crisis situation, it's the psychological profile that you carry with you. It's ingrained in you. You can learn to work around it, but in most cases, it's your character, your psyche is going to determine the efficiency and the level of survival that you can maintain. So, in a situation where if you have the ability to put yourself in a crisis situation deliberately, see how you handle it, and see where you need to improve. Those are the kind of things you can do before a big storm, before a big blizzard, before a big earthquake, or before a big forest fire. Those are the types of things that you can practice, always trying to prepare. Well, let's see. One more call, 10 minutes before the top of the hour. This is the 8 p.m. report with Bob Hawkins. I've been waxing poetically about crisis management, I reckon. But I'd like to get anybody else to call in. Give us your thoughts. Give us your opinions. Give us your impression of the storm, or if you've been in the path of that storm, how'd you do it? How are you doing right now, and what's going to be happening down the road? Give us a call, 347-202-0228. Dial 1 to enter the talk queue. Again, a reminder, tomorrow night, fallout and radiation sickness on Herbal Prepper Live at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. Again, a good crew there in the chat room. We've been discussing things. Got a good link there to a prep manual. And who was it that said they're getting ready to go to Colorado? What's that story about? Oh, yeah, Michael Klein. Trying to pack, heading to Denver. Interesting. Yeah, you got to. Thanks, Michael, for posting that link. That'll work out good. Got the that prep manual. All right, going back over the recap, I've got the latest details from the National Weather Service. We're going to wrap things up a little earlier tonight, but in the meantime, let you get up to the current activity with Tropical Storm Harvey. This is the 8 o'clock report from the National Hurricane Center. Tropical Storm Harvey discussion. And Harvey has continued to weaken while located inland over Texas. Doppler radar data indicates that the winds are now 55 knots. And since there are no surface observations near the center, this is the intensity used in this advisory. Continued weakening is anticipated, and the National Hurricane Center forecast uses the trend provided by the ship's decay model, whatever that means. However, if a large portion of Harvey's circulation remains over the Gulf of Mexico, the cyclone could weaken at a slower rate than shown. Harvey has barely moved during the past few hours, and little motion is anticipated. Since the steering currents are forecast to remain light, Harvey could easily meander for the next 4 to 5 days over southeast Texas, as indicated in the National Hurricane Center forecast. Guidance disagrees in which direction the cyclone will move, but all the models agree that any motion will be quite slow. While Harvey's winds are decreasing, life-threatening hazards will continue from heavy rainfall over much of the southeastern portion of Texas and from the storm surge along portions of the Texas coast. Catastrophic and life-threatening flooding is expected across the middle and upper Texas coast from additional rainfall of 15 to 25 inches, with isolated storm totals as high as 40 inches through Thursday. Please heed the advice of local authorities and do not drive into flooded roadways. Refer to products from your local National Weather Service office and the NOAA Weather Prediction Center for more information on the flooding hazard. A storm surge warning remains in effect for portions of the Texas coast. Life-threatening storm surge flooding will be slow to recede due to the slow motion of Harvey and a prolonged period of onshore flow. Current location of Tropical Storm Harvey is centered at 29.1 degrees north, 97.6 degrees west. Movement stationary at 0 miles per hour. Winds 65 miles per hour. Pressure 29.24 inches. Well, folks, thanks for joining us tonight. The special edition of the APN report covering conditions of Hurricane Harvey. Stay tuned to your local weather stations, National Weather Service information. If you're in the path of this storm, please bring your galoshes. Expect a lot of wet. And make sure you got your insurance paperwork, your health insurance paperwork, your medicines, prescriptions, Band-Aids, whatever you need. And I hope you've got plenty of food and water so you don't have to go to Walmart like everybody else in the middle of the storm. Meanwhile, stay tuned till next week.